All right, we have Vince Cachero on the show. He's coming off a big win at LFA 81, a beautiful trifecta of knees to lead to a second-round TKO victory over Marvin Garcia a little over a week ago. We were supposed to do this interview last week, but I couldn't speak or even move because the flu just wiped me out, but happy to have Vince here on this Monday. Vince, how are you, man?
Man, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on, and I'm glad you're feeling better, Mike.
Thank you, and I appreciate your patience, and congratulations on the victory. It's been around 10 days or so since you got the win. I'm sure you got to savor the flavor for a little while, but are you still savoring it on this February 10th?
Yeah, well, I mean, you always gotta try to savor those moments, right? But for me, it's, when you win, you're expected to win. You always put that expectation on yourself, just because you're training hard, not out of ego, not out of ignorance or anything, but I'm training super hard. I expect to go in there and win the fight. When I go and win, it's great. It's great for that night, but I wrote a post about like 24 hours later, kind of that happiness trickles back down to baseline and you're looking for the next thing. So right now I'm just kind of in that mood, like what's next?
Have you always been like that? Because, sometimes you need like a weekend to savor it and smell the roses a little bit, but it seems like you just take that night, you celebrate, and then you wake up the next morning, you're like, all right, let's move on here.
Yeah, I mean, the happiness lasts and stuff, but it's for me, I'm always like just anxious to know what's next. So for the next day, I was back running on the treadmill in the morning and, I'm just ready to go.
Props to Marvin as well, who stepped in on just 24 hours notice for this fight after Isaiah Button Gonzalez wasn't able to compete. How crazy was that for you, being on the other end, that the guy you were supposed to fight in August, who was forced to withdraw from that fight, steps in on 24 hours notice to save the day here?
Yeah, weird twist of fate, right? I mean, props to him, like you said. Much respect to Marvin for stepping up like that. He's a man of his word. He said he wanted to make it up because he had to pull out last night because he got pneumonia, I think, like the week before or something. So, man, I mean, he showed up and he fought hard and props to him. But yeah, it was just a crazy week. I went through not just two opponents, but there was another one in there as well. There was Isaiah, then there was someone else, and that whole thing fell through literally at weigh-ins, and then Marvin stepped up. So it was a wild mix of emotions that I had to kind of tame throughout the week.
So when did you actually find out that Marvin was going to be taking the fight?
Pretty much at the end of weigh-in day. They said, we think we can make this fight happen. He wants it. We got to make sure the medicals are cleared. I believe he had to get like his eyes checked in the morning or something like that, but he was good to go. So we weighed in. I ended up weighing like 148 and a half. He was like 149 and a half. And yeah, it was just a weird week because I was cutting down to 35. So I was already down in like low 40s. And then my manager's like, yo, we might have a fight at 45 instead. So I started to put on the weight. And then I started to put on more because Marvin's going to fight. And it was just a weird week.
Yeah, I bet. And you go out there, you have that great finish. It was fantastic. You did it against a very tough guy with an impressive record, a guy coming in winning 5 of his last 6. So super risky fight for him to take on 24 hours notice considering the run he's been on. How would you grade your performance overall?
I thought it was really good. I liked that we were able to show improvements from the last fight that we had. The previous fight, we had a wrestler who we lost a split decision to, who I still think I beat him. But he was a world-class wrestler from Ukraine, and he did a really good job of just stabilizing and holding on to my hips. So we worked a lot on this training camp of getting up off of my back, working a lot of the defensive wrestling, and I was able to showcase all of that in this fight. So I was really happy. And then, of course, the way I fight, I like to strike. So obviously, once I kept it standing, it was going to be lights out soon.
You mentioned the prior fight with Ludwig Shalolian, and then you had the loss to Casey Kenny as well before he got the call to the UFC. And those are the first 2 losses of your career since, I believe, it was your amateur debut for the University of MMA back in 2013. Yeah. And I'm sure, like you said, you learned a lot from the Ludwig fight. It showed at LFA 81, and I'm sure you learned a lot from the Casey Kenny fight as well. But, after such a solid run, how did you deal with actually losing and then having that taste in your mouth of having to overcome back-to-back losses?
It was tough. It was very, very tough. Not going to lie, I was down in the dumps for a while, but I feel like I really needed that for my career to know that I can come back from that, to know that, I just got to keep training, just keep putting the work in, make any small adjustments that I need to, but just trusting myself, trusting my coaches, trusting my teammates, and go out there and make it happen. So that's why we really wanted to make any fight happen when our opponent pulled out on Wednesday. And I was ready to take on all comers at any weight. I was like, let's go. Let's just make this fight happen because I know I'm ready.
Even though you felt like you won the Ludwig fight, it still kind of stings on your record. It says you had back-to-back losses. When the fight was over and the ref pulls you off against Marvin and you get that win, what was going through your mind? Did you feel this big weight lifted off of your shoulders? We got the job done, and now those losses are behind me officially.
Yeah. I did feel that. It felt like, it feels like fire in there. You just feel amazing. And for me too, like I'm a huge Kobe Bryant fan. So I wore his jersey into that fight. I wore it right afterwards. And it was like, it was really meaningful for me to go out there and represent Kobe Bryant, the Mamba mentality and everything. So it was like a mix of that plus getting back from the 2 losses too. So it was a good time.
Yeah, Dominic Reyes wanted to wear the jersey on Saturday at UFC 247, but he wasn't able to do it. You were able to do it before and after the fight. Obviously, wearing that, you mentioned the Mamba mentality. He's obviously had a big impact on your life and a lot of other people around the world. How did he specifically impact you in your life? What about Kobe stuck out to you?
Well, I first started watching him when I was 6 years old, and that was the first thing me and my stepdad, sorry, cat in the way, get out of here, bro. That was the first thing me and my stepdad really bonded over, is watching the Lakers. He was a rookie. I just started watching. So I literally grew up watching him play, learned a lot about sports, the mentality, how to come back from loss from him. But more importantly, it was what he was doing afterwards, after sports and everything. He's calling himself a storyteller, but he won an Academy Award. He's pumping out all these children's books about sports, teaching kids the values and important lessons that sports will teach them about life. And that's really what I'm all about. I'm a creator myself. I'm a photographer and videographer. So I was really, looking at that as inspiration for me too, is that once my fight career is over, I would be getting into very much the same thing.
What kinds of things do you do in that aspect?
I actually shoot mainly MMA related things. So I shoot for some MMA companies, but I shoot regularly for Black House, which is, one of my gyms that I train at too. So I pump out all their social media stuff. And yeah, I've shot for like a Brazilian TV show that specialized on fighting. And so I've been to like Anderson Silva's house to go shoot and film. So it's cool, man. I get to, watch fighting, film fighting, and I get to see all that footage too. So I'm looking like, okay, well, what is Anderson doing right here? What is Lyoto doing right here that makes this move work? And I'm seeing that on my screen. So I feel like it just adds a lot of value to both my fighting career and then, my career on the side as well.
Obviously, you're in the midst of fighting right now. Post-fighting career, what do you want to do with photography and videography?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love shooting. I always have a camera on me. So I really do actually. Very much of what Kobe was doing beforehand. I had the idea from a long time ago, but I wanted to show more of the athlete's journey. I believe it's a very cyclical journey. It's something that's repetitive, and we can all learn lessons from athletes. Growing up as a kid who had all these heroes. Most of my heroes were athletes, but I think that there's important values and lessons that they can teach us, and I just want to show more of that to the world.
Love to see you doing those like countdown shows for the UFC. That'd be pretty cool. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
When you heard that Kobe had passed, I know for me, it was obviously a very sad day. I'm a Celtics fan. I grew up in the Boston area, so I remember all the times that he crushed us and hurt our feelings on the basketball court. But still, his ability to be great, and yeah, he wasn't a perfect person. None of us are. He made some mistakes and all, but I know that I took that Sunday and I looked at my life and I hugged my wife and my son tighter. It was a day full of reflection for sure. How did you react to the news?
Yeah, well, I mean, first the TMZ article came out, so I thought it was just a hoax, right? They'd done that before with Lil Wayne, and I just couldn't believe it. I was in shock. There's this whole like, what is it, 5 or 7 stages of that, but it starts with shock first, and I just couldn't believe it for the whole day. And then some of that like just kind of confusion about it, a little bit of anger and sadness, but just extreme sadness after that, because I feel like I grew up with him, and obviously from going to the memorial and stuff, you've seen how many people are out there and just how widespread his influence was. I mean, you're even a Boston fan, and even then it makes you think and reflect on your own life. So the dude had a major impact, and it was tough to deal with, but I knew at that moment, I was like, man, I'm walking out the Kobe jersey. I got to dedicate this fight to him.
How do we continue this positive note in your fighting career representing that Mamba mentality? When would you like to return? Is there anybody you have your eye on after that big win?
Yeah, I mean, no one in particular. I just want the best fights, a good fight that's going to get me in. That's my only goal, is to get into the UFC. My big goal was to get in last year. Unfortunately that didn't happen, but I'm going to get in this year. So I'm talking to my management. They're going to set something up, and hopefully whatever it is, it's a big fight, one that's going to push me in.
Is it fair to say, since from my understanding, we may already be in the middle of booking some fights for the summer. Are we looking to get back in there sooner rather than later? Maybe get on the Contender Series radar? Is that something you got your eye on as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Contenders would be awesome. And like I said, any big fight, so something like that that's going to have some publicity around it would be great. Ideally, yeah, Contender Series would be cool to fight in that new Apex arena too.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about this, but obviously after this weekend, the big topic of discussion in MMA after UFC 247 is the judging and the scoring of fights. I mean, we saw a lot of questionable decisions on Saturday night in Houston, most notably in the main event between Jon Jones and Dominic Reyes. Did you watch the event on Saturday? And if so, how did you score the main event?
Yeah, I watched it. I had the main event 1 through 3 for Dom, and then the last 2 for Jon Jones. It was close. I think it was the second round that was the close one. And it's like, yeah, I could see how you would give it to Jon, or you can give it to Jon, but that one judge who had it 49-46, that's just like no way that happened. And it sucks, man, because Dom actually, you brought up U of MMA before, University of MMA. He fought on that amateur promotion. He was a champion there, so I fought with him there. I fought in the LFA on one of his cards, and to see him go out there and fight Jon Jones was super cool. So maybe I'm a little biased. I don't know. But yeah, I think the judging there, obviously, it was showed. A lot of people were complaining, not just in that fight, but other fights in the card. And, something needs to be done. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to, sit here and ponder about it because it's out of my control, but something has to be done about it.
Would you throw out the word robbery? The word robbery is kind of crazy in MMA because I feel like 5 or 6 years ago, robbery was a term that we were all supposed to use as much as possible. But I feel like every close fight now, that word is used very loosely. But I feel like, in a way, especially going back and watching it a second time, I feel like Reyes got robbed. I do. Mm-hmm. I feel like he should be the champion. Mm-hmm. I feel like in that fight specifically, even though Jon's the champion, and there's all these other narratives that to be the champion, you have to beat the champion, which is a bunch of garbage. That's not true.
Yeah.
Was it a robbery?
Yeah, I mean, I watching it, and I was watching it with my friends and some of them know Dom and stuff. So again, maybe we're biased, but at the time we're like robbery. But I can see, the whole judges thing, like second round being close. But, at the time I was like robbery. I still need to watch it a second time, but I thought it was.
Yeah, I scored it the same way. 1, 2, 3 for Dom, 4 and 5 for Jon. I thought 3 was actually the closer round, but I mean, that's just going back and watching.
I remember one of those was.
Yeah. I still thought Dom won the third round. I know you don't want to ponder on it too much. Like you said, you don't have a lot of control, but what needs to change? Like, if you had a say with judging and scoring, even if it's like basic, and I don't, like you said, you're probably not the guy with the right answer, but I feel like the more we talk about it, someone's going to come up with something where everyone's going to be like, oh, that's like a really good thing. What would you change if you could?
Well, there needs to be like some type of hierarchy of how you're scoring things. Like in my fight with Ludwig, who we brought up, that split decision loss I had, like I beat him down. In terms of damage, I took like maybe a few punches, if that, the whole fight, and he was able to hold me for like half of the round, the second round, half of the round, the third round. But for the first half of that round, I was putting it on him with strikes. So it's like, and the very first round, I really put it on him. So one judge actually gave the fight to me 30-26. And then the other 2 judges gave to him 29-28. So it's like, well, what's going on? What are we actually judging? So I think there needs to be a list of like, okay, we're going by damage first, and then we're scoring this and this and this. Like there needs to be something that we're looking for as fighters. Like, should I be pressuring this guy? Should I be just trying to strike with him? Should I only just try to wrestle and hold him down? Because some judges like that as well. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. That fight still makes me a little frustrated just thinking about what it was that they're watching or what it is that they're looking for. I just need clarity. Like, okay, well, if a guy takes me down and he literally just is holding my hips, like, in between the broadcasts, they have one of the announcers listens in on the corners, right? So they're listening on his corner, and apparently they said on broadcast, like, they're like, don't pass his guard. He's going to stand up. Just try to stabilize him. Just try to keep him there. So it's like, come on, man. He's not even hitting me, and he's just holding me down. Like, that's my fault for being able to be held down. I understand that. But at the same time, it's like, if I've done all the damage for the rest of the round, then who's winning the fight? So I would just like clarity on what it is they're scoring.
I always thought that, I saw some people put out like giving half points in rounds, like if it's really close, like 10 to 9.5, which I don't really like that. I think the answer is after every round, we reveal the scores. Like we know where each fighter stands after every round. So even it's going to do a lot to a fighter mentally in a way, especially if you won the round, or if you felt like you won the round, then you found out you lost the round. That's going to make things interesting, but at least you know where you stand at all times.
Yeah. I seen Max Holloway tweet about that, and I haven't really thought about it all the way through, but it seems pretty logical because every other sport, or most of the other sports, you see the scoreboard, as you're going on. So we know like what's happening or what's being scored, and yeah, obviously there's probably gonna be some drawback to that, like people booing, hating, or some fighters like coasting during the fight if they know like, okay, I'm up 2 rounds, I'm just gonna hold him now. Obviously, no one wants to see that either. But yeah, I mean, I kind of like the idea of that. It would be nice knowing what's going on, but who knows?
Well, you didn't have to go to the judges in your last fight. It was a great win, Vince. Always great to get back on track and get some highlight reels while you're at it. Congratulations on that. Before we let you go, let the folks know where they can find and follow you on the web, social media, any shout-outs, anything else you want to get off your chest. The floor is yours.
Yeah, man. Just check me out on Vince the Anomaly. Thanks again, Mike, for having me. Just want to give a shout out to my sponsors for this fight. We've got Defend Hawaii, the Boiling Crab Hawaii, Manscaped, Miss Mary Jane's, Lace and Loop, and everyone there at Fight Tips Online. And to everyone watching Hawaii, I love you guys. Thank you guys so much for the support.
Thank you, Vince. All the best to you. We look forward to seeing what's next for you.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.